The Voice of Prophecy. Bible Course. The Paths of Faith Lesson 21. God's Law. You cannot conceive of a universe without laws. Unchangeable laws govern the movement of the stars, nature, and life. However tiny matter or life may be, everything is subject to laws. Men are no exception, and those who disobey or contravene these laws destroy themselves in the short or long term. The laws that control the universe are indispensable. Paragraph interpreted. 1. The Decalogue. Apart from the mathematical, physical, chemical, psychological, and social laws, there is one law that serves as the basis for the moral legislation of all peoples, a law whose observance is and remains the condition for the happiness of societies and individuals. It is the Decalogue, or Law of the Ten Commandments. The Decalogue must be considered as the fundamental law of the universe. 1. How should the Decalogue be considered? 2. Its promulgation. God gave this law to Adam and Eve, who were charged with passing it on to their descendants. The patriarchs had a detailed text of it. When God spoke to Isaac, God said to him, "Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my orders, commandments, statutes, and laws." Genesis 26:5. Yet, God intended to communicate his law in a lapidary stone, immortal form. He wanted to proclaim it solemnly in the presence of many witnesses and in an unforgettable and brilliant demonstration of power. This promulgation took place on Mount Sinai, in the presence of all the people of Israel, isolated in a desert, far from all contact with the other nations, from the midst of fire, clouds, and darkness. See Deuteronomy 5:22-27. The text of this faith, written in 10 statements, was found on 2 tables of stone, 4 commandments on one stone, 6 on the other, and was written with the finger of God, which showed its extreme importance. When the Eternal One had finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, God gave him the 2 tables of the testimony, tables of stone, written with the finger of God. The tables were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God engraved on the tables. Exodus 31:18, 32:16, see also 24:12, 34:28 and Deuteronomy 4:12-13, 5:22. 2. Where and how was the text of the Decalogue promulgated? A divine and perfect law. Promulgated, published in such a solemn manner, from the top of a holy mountain, for a people chosen and set apart. This law marks over previous and contemporary laws, notably the Code of Hammurabi, 2,000 years before Christ, a dazzling, amazingly impressive superiority. It has never been surpassed and cannot be surpassed. Moreover, it is impossible to imagine a moral code of any value that does not borrow its substance from him. This comes from the fact that the Decalogue is divine, therefore perfect, immutable, eternal. The Decalogue is a transcendent supreme image of God, who is perfect justice. In these 10 commandments are reflected all the attributes of the divinity. The Decalogue expresses the will of God. The law of the Lord is perfect. The law is holy, and the commandments are holy, just and good. Psalm 19, 8, Romans 7, 12. 3a. What does this law reflect? 3b. What does the psalmist, Psalm 19, 8, say? An immutable and eternal law. The will of God is immutable and eternal, and his law, which is the very expression of that will, is also immutable and eternal. To want to abolish that law would be to deny the character of God, and that is impossible. Now, God changeth not, Malachi 3, 6, in him there is neither change nor shadow of change, James 1, 17. All things that God doth shall endure forever, and there is nothing added to it, nor anything taken away from it, Ecclesiastes 3, 14. He himself declares, I will not violate my covenant, neither will I change that which proceeded from my lips. Psalm 89, 35. For what are the other two characteristics of this law? 5-2 laws. Apart from the law of the Ten Commandments, God gave Israel a set of essentially different ceremonial or ritual laws, having another and different purpose. If the moral law, written on 2 tablets of stone and promulgated by God, deposited in the ark, in the most holy place of the sanctuary, is divine, perfect, spiritual, immutable and eternal, intended for all mankind through the centuries, the second, the ceremonial law, written in a book and promulgated by Moses, deposited beside the ark, is human, transitory, prefigurative, adapted from imperfect and fleshly conditions. See Exodus 25, 16, 21, Deuteronomy 31, 9, 24, Hebrews 7, 16, 19, Acts 15, 10, Galatians 5, 1. Moses gave the ceremonial laws to be used for the regulation of ceremonies, rites, and sacrifices, all things which foreshadowed prophesied the sacrifice of Christ. The ceremonial laws had, therefore, a prophetic significance, that is, it ceased to be in force from the moment the prophecy was fulfilled, when the image met the object it foreshadowed. The ceremonial thus regulated a worship that was an image and shadow of heavenly things, Hebrews 8, 5, a shadow of things to come, a reality found in Christ, Colossians 2, 17. Therefore, the two laws should not be confused. The Decalogue, or moral law, subsists throughout eternity, while the ceremonial law was abolished when Christ died on the cross and when the veil of the temple, which separated the holy place from the most holy place, was torn from above. 5. What small distinction can be made between morality, the Decalogue, and procedural ceremonial law? Christ and the law. Christ has put an end to the legal regime of the Old Covenant. Ceremonial laws, on the other hand, by his life and teaching Jesus highly proclaimed the eternal principles which are the basis of the Decalogue. His mission was both to save mankind by dying for humanity and to reveal to humanity the character and will of his Father, for I have not spoken of myself, but the Father who sent me has himself commanded me what I should say and declare. Therefore, the things which I say them as the Father has said them to me. John 12:49, 50. Conformity in thought and action is what characterizes the Father and the Son. If the Father does not change, we can say that the Son does not change either. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and eternal. Hebrews 13:8. Could Jesus do anything other than to proclaim the holiness, immutability, and eternity of the law, and to abide by the law? In two statements, which leave no room for any ambiguity, Jesus shows the eternity of this law, which he observed perfectly in all circumstances. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or one tittle shall pass from the law, till all things be fulfilled. It is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for a single stroke of the law to fall. Matthew 5:17, 18, Luke 16:17. Christ has therefore fulfilled the law. He did not abolish the law, on the contrary, he exalted it, magnified it, spiritualized it. Jesus freed the law from the traditions which the Jews had surrounded it. He raised the law above the formalism of the Pharisees who respected the letter and rejected its spirit. In this respect, the Sermon on the Mount is significant. See especially Matthew 5:17-37. 6. What was Christ's attitude towards the Decalogue? 7. Loving God and neighbor. Christ masterfully summed up the Decalogue in this statement: You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it: Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Matthew 22:37-40, see 1 John 4:8. Indeed, the Decalogue defines the relationship that must exist between the Creator and the creature on the one hand, and between man and his fellow man on the other. It thus forms the basis of our religious duties and social obligations and constitutes a primordial element of stability, security, and progress in our society. Involuntary obedience to this law is the condition for man's complete freedom, and consequently for true happiness. The first 4 commandments, first table, prescribe our duties to God, and the last 6, second table, prescribe our duties to our neighbor. 7. What is the summary of the Decalogue? 8. The text of the law. The text of this law can be found in Exodus 20, verses 1-17. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. This commandment is the condemnation of polytheism in all its forms. 2. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I the Lord your God, I am a jealous God, who punishes the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, and who shows mercy to 1,000 generations to those who love me and keep my commandments. This commandment is the formal condemnation of all kinds of idolatry. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not let him go unpunished who takes his name in vain. This commandment emphasizes the holiness of God. To pronounce his name lightly is a profanation. For remember the day of rest to sanctify it. Thou shalt work 6 days, and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the day of rest of the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor the stranger that is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea, and all that is therein, and rested the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the day of rest, and hallowed it. This commandment ratifies the day of rest that must be remembered and observed. Notice that the institution of the day of rest dates back to creation and is addressed to all mankind. Honor your father and mother, that your days may be prolonged in the land which the Lord your God gives you. This commandment about filial love is a condition of life and prosperity for people, and always brings its reward. 6. You shall not kill. This commandment is the negation of war, crime, and suicide. 7. Thou shalt not commit adultery. This commandment keeps marriage as a divine institution which must be safeguarded. 8. Thou shalt not steal. This commandment mandates that the property of others must be respected in all circumstances. 9. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. This commandment bans any form of lying and prohibits practicing it. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his servant, nor his handmaid, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that belongs to thy neighbor. This commandment condemns of all kinds of covetousness. God's law doesn't change. It must be observed in its entirety today as it was in the past. The love of God is to keep his commandments. 1 John 5:3. See also John 14:15. 8. What is the love of God?